Hello, everyone. We're having some technical issues, so if you could just hang tight, we'll get started in one moment. Thank you.
Hello, Mara. Can you hear me?
Yes. Mark, if you want to welcome everybody, slides and
You broke up there. Sorry.
you can just go ahead and welcome everybody, Mark. I'm just getting the slides set up.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, to this housing plan informational session. And we're excited to present a plan to the community that will be subject to public hearing comments in the near future. Mara's going to run through a slideshow that has the elements of the plan. And we are eager to hear your questions and comments on the plan at the end of the session.
Good evening, everybody. This is Jill Doherty, Town Board Member and Liaison to the Housing Review Board. And I want to welcome you and let you all know that besides today, on August 2nd, I believe, is the Town Board Fisher's Island meeting. And Mark and Mara will also be there to answer even more questions or take in more comment that day as well, if you want to see things in person. And also, you'll find out information about, but we do have a special email that anybody could submit comments or questions to that Mara will be telling you later. And I'm sorry, we are having some technical difficulties today, so bear with us.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Great. Okay. After that rough start, I just want to again thank everybody for joining, for hanging in there as we get these slides up for you and begin tonight's conversation. I couldn't quite hear Mark when he was speaking, so I'll just let you know. My name is Mara Cerezo. I work as a planner for Southold Town. That was Mark Terry, Assistant Town Planning Director, and also here tonight, Town Board Member Jill Doherty. We're here to talk with you about the community housing plan. The town board wants to hear from all residents of the town, so we really want to gather your feedback on the housing plan we'll talk through tonight and to understand your concerns about housing in your neck of the woods. The most important thing tonight is to hear from all of you. So we'll be going through these slides, which are just an overview of the material that's actually in the housing plan, which is available on the town website. And then we'll open up the discussion for any questions and comments. So let's begin. If it lets me. Okay, so our objectives this evening are to make sure that folks are aware of the draft community housing plan, to really help share an overview of that by engaging a diverse range of Southold Town as well as Greenport Village residents in discussion on the plan, to gather your input to bring back to the town board, and to let you know more about next steps. We'll start with the general overview of why there is a housing plan. We'll then take a look at the key data on Southold, including the people, the housing stock, and the lack of affordable housing. We'll talk about some solutions that are recommended in the housing plan, and then a little bit about the principles that helped guide the writing of the housing plan. The Peconic Bay Region Community Housing Act was signed by the governor back in October of 2021. The legislation said that an advisory board must be established to create a local housing plan to address the lack of affordable housing. The legislation had to get voted on at the local level, which passed in Southold Town in November of 2022. This allowed the town to collect a transfer fee of 0.5% on houses that are sold or transferred in the town. And these fees create a community housing fund. In order for the town to actually utilize the funds, they must adopt a community housing plan, which we're going to discuss tonight. In September of 2022, a Community Housing Fund Advisory Board was appointed. That is part of the legislation that helped give birth to the actual housing plan. The members of the advisory board needed to include folks from a variety of industries as required by the legislation. And then due to the unique nature of our town, we also wanted to ensure fair representation from Fishers Island as well as the village of Greenport. So the industries represented include banking, carpentry, real estate, insurance, and housing assistance. And I just want to give a special thank you to Beth Cashel for being an active and vocal member of the advisory board and for sharing the unique considerations for Fishers Island. This slide here shows the definitions that are currently in the town code under the Southold Affordable Housing District. And then the column all the way to the right shows the Peconic Bay Region Community Housing definition. So this again is included in that legislation that helped us get to this point. So that first row shows the income limits. The one below that shows the purchase price limits for the homes of folks at the varying income levels. And then the bottom line, or bottom row rather, shows the maximum rental rates established for units that are held by the town in the affordable housing district. We then wanted to take a look at what folks are earning across the town. So these wages are based on both regional and local data. They show the average wages for each job title that's listed there. We want to better understand the wages of the local workforce that may not be represented in current data sets. As you can see, these wages would likely not allow someone to purchase a home in today's housing market. It would also be a challenge to find an affordable place to rent. Again, these numbers shown are just averages, and they may not represent the broad array of wages that folks are earning across the town. So now let's dive into the needs assessment. Part of the housing plan includes a robust section on what it is like in the town. What are the challenges that we're facing? And also, what are the demographic shifts? So this first section will talk about the people of Southold. Southold has a large senior population. In fact, seniors account for over 42.6% of the total year-round population. At the same time, the population of young people, those under the age of 20, has declined in the past 20 years. They once represented nearly a quarter of the town's population, and now they're down to just about 15%. Another change in the town is the growth of the Hispanic and Latino population. From 2010 to 2020, there was a 51.6% increase in Hispanic and Latino residents. This population accounts for 15% of the town's residents. When we looked at that decline in young people just a moment ago, the total number of students enrolled in the local schools has declined, but the number of economically disadvantaged students has nearly doubled, increasing from 22% up to 41% in 2020 to 2021. Students that are categorized as economically disadvantaged are those who qualify for assistance programs such as free or reduced lunch, food stamps, or similar offerings. A lot of discussions on affordable housing will use the term median income. The term means that half the people fall below the median income level, and half of people are above the median income level. This is a metric that's commonly used. When we look at the household median income in the town, it's increased over the past 20 years and is now estimated, well, as of 2020, to be $87,109 annually. Now, the median income, when you take a closer look at the hamlets, actually varies hamlet by hamlet. This table, again, is directly from the community housing plan, and these slides will be shared on the town website if you want to take a closer look at any of the data held within. As part of the housing plan, we also conducted a community survey. We had nearly 800 respondents, and over 63% of those know someone who moved outside of Southold due to the lack of housing options. This points to the fact that many people may no longer be able to afford to live in Southold or find suitable housing for their needs. Only 50.4% of the workforce of the town actually live in the town of Southold. The rest come from a variety of places, with the most traveling from Brookhaven, Riverhead, and Southampton towns. This means that the other half of folks who work in Southold are commuting to get to their job here. This adds traffic to the roads and means more people may be relying on the infrequent public transportation. Another important statistic for us to take a look at is what it means to be cost burdened. A household is considered cost burdened if more than 30% of their income is spent on rent or ownership costs. In Southold in 2020, it's estimated that 47% of renters and 34% of homeowners were cost burdened in town. When people pay too much for where they live, it leaves them less money for food and other essentials, as well as just the joys of life. This next section talks about the housing market in Southold. Again, all of these details and statistics can be found in the housing plan. When we take a look at the housing stock in Southold, there are over 16,000 total housing units in town. However, 41% of these are classified as vacant. And most of the housing units classified as vacant are actually seasonal residences. This means a significant portion of houses are unlived in for much of the year. Another concern is that the housing stock in Southold is not diversified. About 90% of the homes are single-family detached. When we took a look at the survey respondents, we noted that people who responded to the survey want to see greater variety in housing types in Southold. They want to still include single-family residences, but also consider two families, townhomes, accessory apartments, maybe apartment complexes, or exploring mixed use with apartments. And again, the majority of folks who responded to the survey are interested in housing units with 2 or more bedrooms. A fact that many folks have found alarming is that Airbnb and other online rental platforms have increased in recent years, and many homeowners are renting out their homes for short-term guests. According to data that we scraped back in February of 2023, there are over 730 active short-term rentals in town, accounting for nearly 4.5% of the total housing units. These short-term rentals may take units away from people who are looking for year-round apartments. The housing market, as we all know, has taken some dramatic shifts over the past several years. And even before then, as of 2020, the median value of an owner-occupied home increased up to $604,800. These values vary across the hamlets, but all showed a marked increase over the 20-year period, with the prices doubling, tripling, or in some cases, nearly quadrupling. It's hard to find accurate data or really specific data on rental prices in Southold, but the data we could find showed that rental prices are also increasing across the town. If you look online, you're more likely to find a vacation or seasonal rental and not a year-round option. In my experience, you find year-round options in the newspaper, on local bulletin boards, or by word of mouth. I know that the situation on Fisher's Island also has a great organization, Walsh Park, who's doing tremendous efforts on supporting the year-round rental opportunities for folks. This slide on affordability just really shows that how out of joint the two are, the median income that folks are earning and the median home prices that our area is experiencing. Someone who's making the median income would not be able to actually afford the median home price. They would be cost burdened. And in fact, less than 5 offerings right now are at or below that median home price. In addition, as of 2023, there are an estimated 329 housing units for rent or sale that can be considered affordable in the town. And these are all already rented or owned. They're through either the Village of Greenport, the North Fork Housing Alliance, or through some approved projects in affordable housing in the town. The next section will talk about the main goals and proposed solutions that are included in the housing plan. This slide that's up there now is the guiding goals, or really I would call them the guiding principles that the Housing Advisory Board utilized in coming up with the solutions that are proposed in the plan. They wanted to increase the variety of housing types in Southold, to offer more apartments, townhomes, and multifamily units. They want to meet the needs of people at different income levels. Not everyone may be ready to buy a home, but everyone needs a place to live. And through all of this, wanting to keep the character of the town. We have a very unique town, a small town in a rural setting. We don't necessarily want it to become a city, and we don't want to lose all of our green spaces. So how can we find the right opportunities to increase density and provide housing across the hamlets? Also wanting to increase year-round rental opportunities at affordable prices. And in order to do all of this work, the housing plan recommends creating a housing department. It's widely recognized that healthy communities contain a mixture of housing types. This allows people of different backgrounds, different family structures, and different income levels to live alongside each other, each adding their gifts to the community. So in section 4 of the community housing plan, you'll see details on the 4 goals that are up on the screen now. These are really the focus areas of how the community housing fund can be utilized as proposed in the current draft. Goal 1 is to increase the inventory of year-round community housing, both for rental and also ownership. The fund will include low-interest loans for housing organizations and developers to build affordable housing, and low-interest loans for people to create accessory apartments. There are several sections of town code that have requirements that must be met in order to apply for these funds. The second goal is to help maintain and support existing affordable housing. The fund will give out grants to housing organizations and nonprofits that currently provide rental housing to community members. This will help maintain the homes and ensure a good quality of life for the people who live there. The third goal is to increase home ownership opportunities. The fund will provide low-interest loans to first-time homebuyers who are looking to purchase a home in the town and are residents of the town or are employed in the town. In addition, there will be an interest-free first-time homebuyer loan to heroes. This includes U.S. military service people, veterans, healthcare workers, and emergency service volunteers. The fourth goal is to support organizations that offer housing education and counseling services. The fund will offer grants to nonprofit organizations who are authorized by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to offer these services. In order to manage the newly created Community Housing Fund, we need to think about how it's going to be implemented and managed. So as I said earlier, the housing plan recommends that the town create a housing department. This would create a dedicated space for accessing town resources related to finding affordable housing, assisting developers who are interested in building affordable housing in the town, promote housing-related matters throughout the community, and also help to oversee and help manage the funding application process. Up on the screen are some example duties of the Housing Department. And again, there are further details in the actual draft housing plan. The sixth section of the housing plan talks about some additional considerations. So in addition to creating a department, there are a few other recommendations that will help the town to address the lack of affordable housing. Finding solutions to address the impacts of short-term rentals, regularly updating the housing plan with more targeted community engagement, considering changes to the code, and also developing best practices associated with affordable housing. You can read the entire community housing plan draft online. You can go to the Town of Southold website, and the last slide I'll put up before we leave shows the pathway on how you can get there. In addition to a QR code, you can scan to be able to access it. We're currently having the plan translated into Spanish. That is not up on the site yet, but hopefully will be shortly. Okay, so we went through all of that to get to hear from all of you. So now is the time for us to hear from you. Again, we want to know your questions on the housing plan, and please feel free to share your stories on housing in Southold. The information you share will not be attached to your name. We are capturing these questions and comments to share general feedback with the town board. Now, this is our first session on Zoom, so we have some Zoom-specific guidelines. You must share your name, not a nickname or a phone number. So I have a couple examples there. If you have your phone number or a different name, if you could just change that now to your first name, last initial, or first and last name. And then you will need to raise your hand to speak. If you're on the phone, I also have guidelines I just need to pull up for how you can unmute and join the conversation. So to raise a hand, if you're joining on the phone, you would need to press *9. And then once you're selected, you would need to press *6 to unmute. So again, that is for the phone option. Otherwise, if you're just on, you can just raise your hand, and it's located at the bottom of the screen, and I will allow you to speak. Now, Mark or Jill, is there anything you wanted to add before we open the floor?
No, I think we should anxious to hear what any comments they have.
So on the screen, I have some discussion guidelines. We have this available till 6:30 tonight. We're going to try to stay on time. I know we were a little delayed in starting. And then this is a time not necessarily for debate, but to really hear each other's opinions and input. So we value hearing from everybody. Actually,
Mara, I do have something to say.
Oh, sure.
Now that you mentioned the time. I just want to let everybody know that I will be leaving before 6:30, but I'm, available to any questions or comments via email, which you can get on the website.
Great. I'm going to stop the share so I can see the participants and add some folks who are panelists. I think Beth Cashel, who is one of our advisory board members, is on. So just again, bear with us here.
Louisa Evans is also on. I don't know if she wants to be brought over.
Should I promote? Should I promote Louisa?
Just if you want.
So again, the floor is open for comments and questions. Or, yeah. Yeah.
So I will just ask Beth and Mara and Mark and Jill, how you specifically think this might help Fishers Island and its housing community.
Well, I'll start since I think one of the areas, and Mara and Mark can pitch into that I see immediate implementation is in the maintenance section. The ability, for example, Walsh Park to access funds to help with the maintenance of current existing community housing. So I think that is one piece. And I think another piece that's important that people might be thinking about is the conversation, and Mara and Mark, you guys can speak a little bit more to this, but the difference in this plan with the definition of community housing and affordable housing, because as you know, on Fishers Island, we do not have affordable housing zoning, nor is Walsh Park technically affordable housing, but community housing. So I want to make sure that everyone listening understands that that is a known fact, and this plan takes that into account to enable Fishers Island to access the funds. And if Mara and Mark want to just sort of add anything to that, I would welcome that.
Yeah, I can add. This is Mark Terry. So this was a big conversation with the committee about the expenditures and the eligibility criteria for Fishers Island. And I think that the most beneficial way forward would be to provide assistance to Walsh Park, as Beth indicated, to say upgrade a water heater or try to put some solar on people's roofs, really invest in the structures themselves, which should provide community housing for a very long time. And, that's also a critical need on Fishers Island. We've had many population changes on Fishers Island, minor ones. But the problem is just like the problem in Southold, having the younger generations move away because of affordability and also for jobs.
And I had the income slide up briefly, but just to recap, the Peconic Bay Region Community Housing income limit for a 3+ person household for this is $204,420 as defined by the legislation. And we do have a few folks with their hands up, so I'm going to Ellen Harvey. You should be able to speak.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Beth, and I want to thank you all for all your work on this. This is important for Fishers. My question is, earlier there was mention of low interest loans or grants to builders to create, I'll use the term community housing. For Walsh Park, which is a nonprofit that is currently trying to, we're on the last stage, hopefully, of getting permission from the health department to build housing on land that we're about to acquire. Would Walsh Park be eligible to have a low interest loan or a grant for that construction?
Yes, they definitely would. That's part of what we discussed in a large part of our discussions. And it might even be a no interest loan, or it might be, depending on, the vetting process, it might even be a grant that does not have to be paid.
Terrific.
For the nonprofits, we decided that, something like no interest or a grant not being paid back would be a positive thing for the community.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. I also see that Susan Ferguson. Susan, you're able to speak if you just unmute yourself. Susan, you're still on mute. So I'm going to allow, it looks like Alexandra. You can now unmute Alexandra. Can't hear.
No.
Hello, can you hear me?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I have to disconnect my phone. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I also want to emphasize and reiterate what Ellen Harvey stated, which I am sorry, let me say, Alexandra Norton, I live on Fisher's Island. I'm one of the beneficiaries of having the opportunity to have my family, my sons and I live on Fisher's Island, to be closer to our family. And I fully support this fund. And I think it's a wonderful thing because since I've moved here in the past 2 years, all I hear is that there's no housing for local residents. And so I want to acknowledge that you're doing a fantastic job. And I also want to acknowledge that you may receive some pushback, but I want to tell you and affirm to you that you're doing a really good thing. Number two, when you mentioned the low interest loans, I'm also curious if there's an option to have some of the, as you stated earlier, the prices of these homes are astronomical in all of the hamlets, including Fisher's Island. So is there a way of also subsidizing these retail prices of these homes? Because a low interest loan or for a $800,000 home really doesn't do much for a family that has an income of $200,000. So that's my second question. And then my third question will be to address Louisa Evans, because I know she's the representative of Fisher's Island. And I attended that meeting where the board approved this funding. And she was the only town council member that voted no. And so I wanted to know if she has changed her mind or her status on this. And what was it exactly what were her actual concerns that she voted no on this proposition?
So Alexandra, I'll answer that question so we can move on to the others. I voted no because I didn't feel comfortable until we had a plan in place voting to stop stockpiling money. I wanted to know what the plan was going to be before I voted yes on it. I have nothing against the 0.5%. I just wanted a plan in place beforehand.
Okay.
You want to answer her first?
The subsidizing home costs?
Yeah.
So currently, there's not a plan to subsidize home costs beyond what the offerings are. I will say that this is the kind of the first round of the housing plan. I mentioned it as an additional recommendation, but it's also required in the legislation that the town actually update this plan. I think in the legislation it says every 5 years, but the advisory board recommended on an annual basis. So if this is something that we continue to hear from folks, then that could be something that the town could consider in the future. Right now, it's the sort of offerings, the array that I walked through this evening. So I will note that when we talk about sort of purchase price limits, again, Beth would probably point to me and say the community housing definition for that is actually much higher than the purchase price limits set by the Affordable Housing District. So the legislation bases that off of the State of New York Mortgage Agency low interest loan program and how they calculate it. So the price level, even though I don't expect it to always go up to this number, but actually allows for a purchase price limit of just over $1.2 million. So it's a rather sufficient sort of buffer there for folks to consider prices. So maybe it's a consideration on the amounts of the loans would be something that the board would consider thinking about. I don't
I
know, Mark, if you have anything to add to that.
Yes, I do. So this is a very important question. It is evident that the home prices versus the income levels are too far apart for many people to afford a home. If someone on Fisher's Island has a family home or some other type of home outside of the Walsh Park organization, they could qualify for down payment assistance loans and also loans through the town that we're structuring so you can stack them. So for instance, you can get a loan from Sunny Mae for first-time home buyer, and then the town could also stack another X amount of dollars on top of that. And then the county also has first-time home buyer assistance of, I believe, $15,000 that sunsets after a certain period of time. So when we modeled this structure and the expenditures and the eligibilities, we were trying to figure out all the inputs that someone's going to need to afford a home. And we're far apart now, and we do know that. But with some creative ways and some opportunities that the town board will develop, I believe that we can put people in units. Now, the other thing is accessory dwelling units or accessory apartments is one of the most hopeful ways to house people on Fisher's Island and obviously also the mainland. And that is one of the things that we're looking at. We have a program that will the state gave $2 million to the town of Southold to incentivize accessory dwelling units, and that structure is being worked out. So for instance, if you have a home and you want to put an accessory apartment in it, the town's going to have funding available on certain levels to do that. So that's pretty exciting to sort of meet the need and get the number of units town-wide up.
No, absolutely. I think that's a fantastic idea. So that would that entail that zoning would be changed as well? Because I know right now currently zoning reads that it's very difficult, correct, to build attached homes.
Yes, the town board right now is currently working on updating their zoning code to allow the accessory apartments to make it an easier process. We're currently also talking about changing it to the effect that it won't have to go to zoning board, that it would just be a building department decision.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're trying to make it easier, and there's so like Mara said, 90% of the housing in town is single family, and if we're going to even tackle the housing crisis, we have to diversify our housing.
Absolutely. And just lastly, now that I have your attention, I do want to ask, so should Walsh Park have these opportunity for these funds, is there going to be certain regulation about the amount of funds that go to renovation and repaired and also building new construction? Is that something that they're going to self-regulate, or is that something that the town's going to have like a clear, budget amount for each of those things?
Right now it's structured so that they would be separate. There would be funds for maintenance, and then there's funds for construction. So like Mark said, you should be able to stack, but those would be accounted for separately, I would imagine.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And Beth, you have a hand raised.
I just wanted to, Alex, good point about the accessory housing. One of the things I just wanted to clarify is the accessory housing is for year-round use, not to use as seasonal use.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Do we have any other questions or comments? I don't see any raised hands at the moment.
Don't be afraid. And if you think of questions or comments after you read everything, then please, reach out to us. What is that email address, Mara?
Sure, I can put up the last couple of slides. Oh, Ellen, I see your hand raised again. So I'm going to allow you to talk while I pull up those slides.
Thank you. One other question that I had related to construction for single family versus multiple houses, and whether Fishers Island is a small place, is there going to be a limit as to how much money will be available to residents of Fishers Island for all these programs relative to, say, other parts of Southold or Greenport or something like that?
Right now, and I don't think we'll be doing it, but you never know. Right now, we don't have a percentage of funds going to each hamlet. It's just one fund. And there's a vetting process depending on what you apply for. So it's not like, okay, Fishers Island gets 10% and Southold gets 60%. It's nothing like that. It's done by a case-by-case basis right now, unless the town board decides to change it.
Thank you.
Oh, the computer. Did we just lose everybody?
Yeah, I think everybody's still there.
Okay.
I wanted to have Mara put up the information because we're starting to have technical difficulties again, and make sure everybody gets it before we.
Well, if you have your pen and paper handy, since technology is not on our side, the email address for any questions or comments is housing plan, one word, at southoldtownny.gov. So again, the email address for any questions or comments, you can contact us at housingplan@southoldtownny.gov.
And Mara, I thought I saw Alexandra's hand back up, but maybe it's from before.
Yeah, we're having
We can't
severe,
get to it right
the
now.
mouse is not moving on the laptop. So if everyone can hang on, we can try to make it happen, but.
So while you're doing that, there's a couple of important points. The first important point is the registry. If someone on Fishers Island has a young person or a 55 and older person, or even anybody in between that is looking for housing and doesn't want to move out of the town of Southold, it's important that they, if they're eligible, sign up for the registry. Now, the registry is going to be managed by a person that the town board is going to hire, as well as in joint with the Housing Advisory Commission, which is active now in trying to evaluate as well as put units on the ground in the town. So that's a very important point. If the person's not on the registry, you'll have a lower chance of being placed in a unit or obtain a unit or qualify for it.
Sorry, Mark. We're
Our tech is completely frozen. I don't even know how the Zoom is running at this point. I am so sorry. We're still trying.
One of the things I'm going to say that has to do with the registry, a lot of people on Fishers Island really probably don't take advantage of that, because they're also, and Walsh Park may say something here, is it's not really relevant as much as Fishers Island. However, it is relevant, is there's a lot of other sources that stacking that people are talking about, and the ability for us to communicate to our residents how there are other resources in addition to Walsh Park, in addition, that the town has access to. And by getting yourself on the registry, you get information and access also, maybe not to a unit that's also going to be in Southold because you live on Fishers, but it's the other pieces that I think that I learned through this process could be very useful for the Fishers Island residents. The other question, I'm going to follow up on Ellen's comment or Alex's comment on the percentage. Is there a limit on how much Fishers gets? That was a conversation that was had in the advisory. And a question that many people, and there might be people here today on this meeting who are thinking about this, well, will we get a proportionate amount of what we put into the 0.5% of the Peconic Bay Fund? That we will not. They're not going to be allocating the funds based on Greenport gave this much this year, this hamlet gave this much. It's going to be one fund, and as Mara very clearly said, it will be a case-by-case basis. But again, because it's going to be reevaluated every year, if Fishers, and if we discover that we feel somehow we aren't getting what we believe we need, or what seems to be a fair representation, there is going to be a continual reevaluation of that. But I do think it's important for everyone to know that there is not there's not amount in, amount out. There is no calculation like that.
I just want to thank Beth too, because she's worked very hard to make sure there are things in this plan that will help Fishers Island, that will be pertinent to Fishers Island, so that we know that there's a chance that 0.5% money, some of it will come back to Fishers Island. So thanks, Beth.
All right, thank you.
So one of the things that Fishers Island is unique
Let me
is,
thank
can you hear me? Is the process of residents that are in the affordable housing program, and due to your demographics and your geographic situation, those will be set aside, and you won't be in the entire pot of the Southold housing initiative. Fishers Island, under our town code, has an ability to, or people on Fishers Island have the ability to be treated a little bit differently because of that situation I just said. So that's an important point.
All right, so we're having technical difficulties here. I called our IT guy, and he said we have to shut everything down, cancel the Zoom, and restart it. I'm not sure if we really need to do that right now. I don't know if there's any other questions. Because we can't raising hands right now, so we can't move you over. Louisa, what do you think we should do? Should we restart, or should we just kind of talk about some more points and then have people email us questions?
I would, if you have more points to talk about, I would talk about it. We've lost a lot of the audience at this point, down to 15. And
Okay.
so I'm not sure you'll catch that many coming back on. So if you would make whatever points, and then give the information again about how to reach out to members of the team.
Okay, great. Yeah, because we can't even see who's on or anything. Thank you, Lisa. So what I will talk about is next steps. We have another informational meeting on the 27th at our Matatuck Library. We're doing an informational meeting at a luncheon meeting at our senior center. As I said earlier, we're going to be on Fishers Island, and we'll have some hard copies, not too many, a few hard copies of the plan for people. And Mark and Mara, we haven't worked out the details, but most likely we'll have a table in the cafeteria for people to come over and ask questions. I'll have Mara repeat the email one more time before we end. But you can also contact me or Louisa with any questions, and we'll get back to you. The plan is on the town website, the entire plan. So please read through it. And if you come up with any questions, reach out to us. We will hopefully, depending on how much information Mark and Mara come back to the town board with, we'll see what changes we need to make. Once the town board is satisfied with the draft plan, we will be setting for public hearing, which I hope to be in August. I don't foresee us closing the public hearing that same day. I foresee us keeping it open a few weeks. And I would like to try to have an approval of a plan by September. Because we cannot spend the money until we have an approved plan, and there's a process for that. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to open the program.
And Jill, I've reserved rooms at the community center, so maybe you, Mark, and Mara, or at least one of you can be there for people if they have questions and stuff on August 2nd.
Okay, yeah, we can plan and you know, bring the laptop and hopefully not have these issues.
Goodness. Thank you. So again, we'll be capturing these questions and comments and summarizing them, presenting them back to the town board, who will determine if any revisions are necessary. And then, as Jill mentioned, the town board will schedule and host public hearings before the housing plan is adopted. So you can view the housing plan online on the Southold Town website. You can click on the services tab, which then has the Community Housing Fund page, and you'll find the draft there. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to email us at housingplan@southoldtownny.gov. Again, housingplan@southoldtownny.gov. And thank you to everyone for holding on during this evening of technological difficulties. Will probably be replaced by AI at some point to run these things. But seriously, thank you all so much. Thank you to Beth and the rest of the advisory board for their work in getting us to this point.
Thank you. And yes, thank you, Beth. You've really, she really fought for Fishers Island, and explained in simple terms to the rest of the review board who's not familiar with Fishers Island of the differences and the similarities. So it's been a great working group, and I'm proud of the plan they came up with, and I'm looking forward to more input from the public. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
With that, we'll say goodnight. Thanks. Yeah. I know. I guess you have to turn off the computer. Yeah.
Then I start to put the Zoom on, like it was like 10 minutes long. And he's like talking, I'm like, yeah. And then I go and it's like not enough storage, and it kept crash. So I reached out to Zach and he's like, just reboot it, and I rebooted and it seemed to be fine. This is what happened.
Yeah, and that's what Lloyd was saying, reboot it again.
There's gotta be a better solution.
Yeah. I knew if I told people I had to leave early, it would be over by 6.
That's good.
Yeah.
Where the hell is the other button? Am I losing my mind? Is it this? What is that? It's like a little fingerprint thing. Oh, there it is. Still frozen.
Oh my God. Fine. Yeah, I've never,
Oh my gosh.
and there's nothing to shut it off.
How is this possible? Like usually, like there would be a button.
Yeah. Turn it off after use. No kidding, but how?
How?
Can you press the escape button?
Yeah, escape, control. Let's try that again.
Can't believe there's no like on off button. Turn off after use.
How?
No.
I feel bad texting that.
Well, he doesn't care. He's good with that. So was Lloyd. Lloyd was at the brewery. He picked up the phone. He answers my call.
Gotta go over there now.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to Sophie's now.
Ah,
For a fundraiser, Ducks Unlimited fundraiser. Yeah, there's no,
what the hell?
like, how would you even turn it on? Like, you wouldn't even know how to turn it on.
Losing my mind. Is that the button for it?
Oh.
That's it?
That's it. I guess it's off. That's so weird.
I have to stop recording, otherwise we're gonna have like 24-hour recording on the Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah, then it goes
Okay.
back on. Yeah, that's it.
So, okay. Maybe I don't. I'll get to Zoom.
let's text, let's call Zach and just make sure. He's not gonna mind. You're getting Zach that way?
Oh, no, I was
Oh,
gonna
okay.
just go in to try
Oh.
to stop
Oh, right, yeah, I don't know.
the recording of this
Oh.
crazy thing. How
It's-
insane.